her children are bastards! And she is a whore. I will have your tongue for that.
6 years after Rhaenyra and Daemon's wedding, the couple bears 2 kids, Aegon the Younger and Viserys. While the Targaryen duo lives a somewhat peaceful life, trouble hits the Valyrian household. Corlys heads out for a sea expedition and falls terribly sick after sustaining a grave battle injury. Word of his illness reaches Driftmark and sparks a heated debate about the Valyrian succession. Preparing for the worst, Rhaenys and Corlys's brother Vaemond discuss who would inherit Driftmark if Corlys passes. Speaking on behalf of her husband, Rhaenys explains Corlys picked Luke, Laenor's second son, as his heir, and suggests they follow his wishes. Power-hungry, Vaemond rejects the idea and covets the Master of Driftmark station for himself. Explaining his reasoning, Vaemond details Luke isn't Laenor's biological son, hence he isn't a true-born Valyrian, and should not inherit Driftmark. As both parties have conflicting interests, they decide to visit King's Landing and have King Viserys settle the issue. Rhaenyra and her family are also informed of the pressing debate and head home for the trial. On their arrival, the princess discovers much has changed during her time away. Viserys' illness has worsened and left him bedridden, leaving Alicent and Otto in charge of the decision-making as they rule in place of the king. Realizing this, Rhaenyra fears the queen may sabotage them and choose Vaemond as Driftmark's heir instead of Luke. To avoid this, the princess and Daemon visit Viserys to get the king to preside over the upcoming trial. However, despite the couple's best efforts, the sick Viserys can barely understand their words and is too weak to take any decisive action. As the king is unable to help, Rhaenyra grows desperate for an ally and asks Rhaenys for her support during the trial. To win her over, Rhaenyra offers to wed her sons Jace and Luke to Rhaenys' granddaughters, Baela and Rhaena. That way, Baela would become queen someday, while Rhaena would rule on the Driftwood throne by Luke's side. Enticed by the proposal, Rhaenys agrees to wed her granddaughters to Rhaenyra's sons and decides to support her during the trial. Meanwhile, at the other end of the castle, Alicent receives word of an incident in Aegon's room and heads to address it. Moments later, the queen learns that her deviant son sexually assaulted a maid. To keep the incident secret, Alicent offers the servant money for her silence and forces her to drink a contraceptive tea. After dismissing the maid, the queen meets an unremorseful Aegon and scolds him for his actions. While the prince shows no regard for the incident, Alicent slaps him and angrily storms out of the room. The following day, the matter of Driftmark's succession is held in the Great Hall of the Red Keep. As Viserys isn't available, Otto sits on the Iron Throne and oversees the case. Commencing the proceedings, the king's hand calls Vaemond to plead his case and argue his legitimacy. Taking the stand, Vaemond declares he's Corlys's closest kin and subtly insinuates Luke isn't a true-born Valyrian. Rhaenyra moves to counter Vaemond's point, but Alicent quickly shuts her down and asks that she wait her turn. Seeing this, the princess realizes the queen and her father are on Vaemond's side and fears they may rule in his favor. After Vaemond's speech, Rhaenyra is finally allowed to plead her case. However, before she can begin, the case is abruptly interrupted as the palace doors are flung wide open. To the court's surprise, a frail-bodied Viserys walks in and heads to the Iron Throne. Barely able to stand, the king staggers to the throne and slowly drags his way there. With Daemon's help, Viserys mounts his rightful seat, while Otto gets up for the king. Taking control of the dispute, the king declares Corlys's wishes must be respected and calls Rhaenys to testify on her husband's behalf. Choosing Rhaenyra's side, Rhaenys reveals to the court that Corlys wanted Luke as his heir. Backed by her testimony, Viserys reaffirms Luke's legitimacy and declares him Driftmark's future successor. Unimpressed by the result, Vaemond rejects the king's decision and causes a scene. In a fit of rage, the Valyrian calls Rhaenyra's children bastards and publicly labels the princess a whore. Hearing these insults, Viserys grows angry and orders the permanent removal of Vaemon's tongue. However, before the guards can get to him, Daemon whips out his Valyrian steel sword, Dark Sister, and slices Vaemon's head in two, instantly killing him on the spot. After settling the trial, the sick Viserys is carried out by the guards and returns to his chambers to rest. Later that night, the entire royal family sits to have dinner together for the first time in over 6 years. While they eat, Viserys delivers a speech addressing the growing division between Rhaenyra and Alicent's families. Torn by their discord, the king reveals his dying wish is for his family to finally be united in peace. Following her father's wishes, Rhaenyra raises a toast to Alicent and apologizes for their past grievances. The princess also expresses gratitude for the queen's loyalty to Viserys and showers her with compliments. Hearing this, Alicent also makes peace with Rhaenyra and returns the favor. The queen also apologizes and for the first time publicly acknowledges Rhaenyra as Viserys' true heir. With that, both women make up, much to Viserys' delight. Despite Alicent and Rhaenyra's peace treaty, their children still bear animosity toward each other, as Aegon quietly makes snark remarks at Jace. Midway into dinner, Viserys is overwhelmed by pain and carried to his room. After the king leaves, Aemon decides to spark trouble and makes a toast to Rhaenyra's kids. Using a tactful wordplay, the prince calls them strong boys, a coy reference to their biological father, Harwin Strong. This insult doesn't bode well with Rhaenyra's kids and prompts them to take action against Alicent's boys. A small fight breaks out between Aemond, Aegon, Jace, and Luke, but the guards quickly intervene to quell the discord. After the squabble, Rhaenyra retires for the night and informs Alicent that she's returning to Dragonstone with her kids. Having patched their grievances, the queen is saddened by the news and asks Rhaenyra to stay longer. In response, the princess insists on returning home, but promises to visit Alicent soon. With that, Rhaenyra and her family leave King's Landing and head for Dragonstone. That night, Alicent visits her sick husband and feeds him a powerful analgesic to numb the pain. Under the drug's influence, Viserys' mind gets fogged as he mumbles some incoherent words. The king talks about his ancestor Aegon, alongside his prophecy, the Song of Ice and Fire. In his dazed state, Viserys believes Alicent to be Rhaenyra and declares that she, Rhaenyra, is the leader destined to unite the realm in the prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire. However, misconstruing his words and hearing the name Aegon, Alicent believes her husband is referencing their son, Aegon II, and takes it as a sign that he should be the next heir instead of Rhaenyra. After their brief talk, Alicent allows Viserys to rest and retires for the night. On her departure, the sick king sheds a tear as he mumbles in pain and dies in his sleep.